in June 2014, and I was the editor-in-chief of this huge apparatus called the Hoopla, an online magazine, and Peter and his colleagues were jailed in Egypt, and we had a correspondent in the Middle East, Yara Bou Melhem, who was, I believe, she worked for Al Jazeera at times and was an occasional colleague of yours, I think, Peter. And she wrote this article, which she said, he feels isolated. And this is how the story went. I was picking up Andrew Greste outside of Cairo's notorious Tora prison, where he had been visiting his brother Peter the day after he was dealt a shocking 7-year sentence by an Egyptian court. It was the first time he'd seen Peter since the verdict was handed down, and he was still raw from their 45-minute meeting. Quote, we tell him about the campaigns and what people are saying, but he's so cut off. No computers, no internet, nothing. He's only received 3 letters while he's been in prison, and he really appreciated getting those, he said as we negotiated the Cairo traffic. 3 letters, that's it. Andrew, a cotton farmer from Toowoomba, and his younger brother Michael, a police officer, have spent the past 4 months between them in Egypt. They tag team, each brother spending about a month at a time in Cairo just to be with Peter. They relay updates on Peter's case and news from the outside world, but realise now that he still feels cut off. In the car, Andrew and Michael devise a way to get messages of support to Peter. Within minutes, they create an email address for their appeal to the public, freepetergreste@gmail.com. Well, we ran that story in the Hoopla, and we also said, if you would like the Hoopla to send on your behalf a letter of support to Peter Greste and his colleagues, leave a comment in the thread below, and we will send emails from the Hoopla community. I'll leave it to Peter to explain just how he came to see that correspondence, but within a very short time, we had 128 letters, and I just loved every one. I'd like to read a few, many of which were addressed not only to Peter but his colleagues as well, but here's a selection, and I love them so much for their intimacy and their kindness. And I was rereading them last night and thinking how much compassion there is in this Australian community that I think we've lost sight of and we don't understand about ourselves anymore. But there it was for me in those emails, and that's why I will read you some. This one's from Honey Brown. My thoughts go out to you, my heart goes out to you. And I'm going to actually cry doing this because every time I read it, I get it. My thoughts go out to you, my heart goes out to you. If the combined goodwill of all of us here in Australia could be harnessed, packaged and airlifted over to you, it would flatten those cell walls and locked doors. It would pick you up and carry you home. And I love all the little personal touches. Here's a few snippets. Dear Peter, don't think you are forgotten. I'm an aged care nurse in Perth. And when the verdict came down, I was with a lady in her late 90s. And she looked up and said, that's not right. And it isn't, Peter. Full stop. Here's another one. Hello, Peter. I want you to know that my husband and I stood in complete silence when we heard the verdict. Our 14-year-old daughter asked us what had happened, and we said you'd been in prison for being a journalist and do what journalists do. And I love the ones from the blokes. The ones from the blokes were especially good. Dear Peter, in news from home, Melbourne is windy and rainy. Clive Palmer and Al Gore are now environmental mates. Hashtag Palm Gore. MasterChef is down to the last combatants. And the the World Cup has been going on for a long time. Australia hasn't won any games, but no surprises there. Here's another one. Dear Peter, Melbourne is cold. The Hawks were beaten by the Dockers. The government keep putting their feet in their mouths. I know. And then there were the ones that were so poetic and lovely. This is from Meg. After a cold and drizzly Melbourne winter, the first of the daffodils are blooming in my garden, and the first wattles blooming in the Yarra Valley. The appearance of these golden yellow flowers always brightens my thoughts and gives me hope of better times ahead. While you cannot see these beautiful flowers from within your prison cell, I know that you can picture them in your mind, and I hope you can hold within you the positive thoughts for a bright future. How about this one from Tassie? This one's brilliant, from Helen. I'm sitting in a shed in the far south of Tasmania. It's wintry and glittering outside. The fire is going and I'm baking a pumpkin cheesecake for an afternoon tea where a few of us will present a crochet blanket that we had a hand in making to a new baby. Well, you know, that's fair enough. They are from Tasmania. They're doing their best, you know. I just love that. I just love that. The fact that people thought all these little details were just... And here's one, and this is the one that makes me cry. I was reading it last night, having a good old help. This one's from Liz. And come back soon. The kookaburras, currawongs, butcherbirds and magpies are calling for you. Greste, in their beautiful own language, us too. Isn't that just divine? Anyway, sorry. And finally, this one is from the eminent publisher, journalist and editor Richard Walsh, who's with us tonight and is also another jailbird like a good self. And this is part of his letter. In my callow youth, I was sentenced here in Sydney to 6 months hard labour for some feeble journalism I had written. And you'll have to, I'll just ask you to go and ask Richard to fill you in on all that, because it's too long a story to tell, isn't it?
Yeah. Already.
That was a shock, but merely a flea bite compared to your current experience. At least we had the prospect of bail and the possibility of taking the matter to a higher court, where surely good sense would prevail. In the case of myself and my co-accused, our appeal was successful. I know that your path to justice is nothing like as simple as that. If I have learned anything in my lifetime, it is that the truth does ultimately prevail. But it often takes time. I can only hope that you are strong and that the enormous support there is for you here in Australia throughout the world can keep you strong. Cheers, Richard Walsh. So as you can see, those wonderful, wonderful letters came from reprobates, mums in Tassie, bird brains who looked out the window and imagine they were talking to birds. Who knows? People who barrack for the Dockers. What the fuck can you do about that? So, thank you, Peter, and so good to see you here. Who can believe it? Thank you for inviting me, including me in your book.